Is it? Are you sure?
Good evening, and thank you for joining us for another Northshire Presents virtual event. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Rachel Person, Events Manager for Northshire Bookstore in Saratoga Springs, New York, here with my good friend and colleague, Dafydd Wood, Event Manager for Northshire Bookstore in Manchester Center, Vermont. Thank you so much for being here tonight and for your incredible support of independent bookselling. We couldn't do this without you, and we're very grateful to you for that. We have a great list of books tonight, and I am sharing screens so that you can see them as we talk about them. But Dafydd is also going to post a link in the chat with the link to this blog post that includes all of these books for your convenient browsing and shopping and following along at home. So without further ado, Dafydd, why don't you take us away?
Thank you, Rachel.
Dafydd, you just remuted yourself.
Of course I did. I've only been doing this for 3 years. Of course I remuted myself. All right, I've put the link in the chat that will take you to the website that we've got, the webpage that we have up there right now, which is the November 2022 Bookseller Bookchat, with all of the titles that David and then Rachel and I will be recommending tonight. All right, well, without further ado, it is my great pleasure to recommend, to introduce the first bookseller who will be presenting tonight. This is our Bookseller Bookchat, one of our most popular events where booksellers from both Northshire locations, Manchester, Vermont, and Saratoga Springs, New York, recommend books. And first up, we've got David Gray Smith, a bookseller from our Manchester, Vermont store, recommending a few titles for us. David mostly works up in kids, but he's got some authored, some adult titles as well, some graphic novels, actually. David, why don't you talk about what you've been reading? Thanks so much.
Hi, everybody. I'm David. Like you said, I work in the Manchester bookstore. Recently, I've been churning through a lot of kids' books. I had a pile of like 20 of them that I was working through. I had COVID recently, so I just took a whole bunch of them home and churned them out one by one. I like reading a lot of books with like animal characters. I like reading books that kind of trend towards a stranger sort of vibe. Today I am going to be going over some books recommending for a sort of holiday present sort of time theme, right? I've also got some that are a little more recent in coming out, some classics. We'll start with the first one, Honeybee, The Busy Life of Apis mellifera, which is the Latin name for a honeybee. I studied beekeeping a bit, and this was probably about 2 summers ago. And I just picked up this book to see what it had in it, and it blew me away. It is absolutely gorgeous, really detailed. The text is very engaging, talks about the bees in a very like personifying kind of way, but without making them feel too human, which is kind of a pet peeve of a lot of beekeepers, that people anthropomorphize them a little too much. It's got these gorgeous spread pages of the bees flying out to, oh my gosh, you're not even gonna be able to see it all, of the bees flying out to the field. And it basically just goes over the life cycle of a bee in a very digestible way for kids. It is also right at the end, it has a really well done scientific like analysis of bees that's maybe a little advanced for younger kids, but for kids that are like late elementary, early middle school, it would be very good. I would actually have used these on my test that I had to take for the beekeeping. It's all very good information, correct, and like a lot of it is also pertinent to the current state of bees. A lot of discussion of colony collapse disorder, which I know a lot of people are concerned about. Yeah, very good one to pick up if you're approaching the holidays and you want something a little more educational. Next one, we've got, of course, for holidays, one of the biggest books we sell is the Polar Express, Chris Van Allsburg. I'm not going to recommend that because you all know what that is. I'm going to recommend The Sweetest Fig. I don't have it with me today. It's currently coming into the store on a reorder, but this is a story of a really, really nasty guy who, I believe he's a doctor, and he has a client who he is unable to pay him after he treats him. So he accepts the payment of 2 really, really sweet figs that make your dreams come true. And he's mad that he got paid in figs, and he's really rude to the guy, and then he eats the fig thinking it's just a fig, and it makes his dream come true, but not a dream in like the metaphorical sense, like in the sense that he has a dream at night and it comes true. And then he spends pretty much the rest of his life from that point on dedicating himself to having the perfect dream until he gets to the point where he's hypnotizing himself at night every night to make sure he has the right dream before he eats the next fig. Let's just say it doesn't work out for him. It's very good in terms of showing how planning too much is not necessarily always that fruitful. And it's kind of like a comeuppance story as well. His characters, he has a dog that he's very not nice to, and it's a cat or a dog. I believe it's a cat, sorry. He has a cat he's very, very not nice to, and something happens with the cat and the fig that you might be able to guess from what I just said. But Chris Van Allsburg is one of the best author illustrators I have ever gone through contemporarily since I got this job. One of the things that kind of sucks about this job is that whenever I'm reading a book, there's like a nagging critic in the back of my mind thinking about every little thing that could make the book slightly better, because I'm so used to kind of just thinking about how I'm going to write a review for the book. But Chris Van Allsburg, when I read his stuff, I just absorb it completely. I'm totally involved with it. His artwork is just so engaging. The stories are very, very fluid. And pretty much the same is true of the next guy, Brian Selznick. He is an author of the same sort of photorealistic, show you the back cover, photorealistic bend as Van Allsburg. And this is a novel told in both pictures and in outbreaks into prose. I recommend it a lot to parents who are trying to wean their kids off of graphic novels, because it does a very good job of keeping that crowd very engaged with the picture aspect of the book, but also getting them to kind of hunker down and read through the serious verbiage. This is Selznick's first book that he wrote as like this sort of novel, graphic novel hybrid. He has 2 others, but I read this one as a kid. It's probably my favorite one just from nostalgia. In terms of what it's about this guy, Hugo Cabaret, I believe, or shoot, I haven't read it in a little bit. His name might not be Hugo Cabaret, that might be the name of somebody else in the book. But he just, oh no, it is Hugo Cabaret. I'm misremembering my misremembering. He discovers an automaton in an attic, and he's trying to figure out what's going on with the automaton. It has a lot to do with the invention of moving picture, ties into a lot of the very, very old school silent films, black and white silent films of the era. And it's kind of a story about found family, him like using this curiosity he has as a vehicle to discover himself in relation to others. Next one, Code Talker. this month is Native American Heritage Month. Code Talker is a book about the Navajo Code Talkers, who are this group of specialized military personnel during World War II. The Navajos had such a complicated language that the Japanese were unable to decipher it for purposes of coded communication. You had people calling in Japanese in like perfect English and calling in like mortar strikes on the Americans. So they needed to get people in who were totally untranslatable to the Japanese. So that's where the Navajo came in. But the irony of it is that these Navajo were intentionally forced to purge their language just years prior, just like the generation prior. The Navajo were forced into these schools, private schools that were purging them of the Navajo language, getting them to learn English. They were very, very abusive. And this follows the story of a guy from his childhood being like taught to hate his language, to suddenly having to contend with the fact that his language is pretty useful. It's a very, very good introduction for kids into like the dichotomy of American history, how a lot of it is very, very unpleasant to have to engage with, but also there is a lot to be appreciated in terms of like, especially World War II, how we dealt with that. But then you look at stuff like Japanese internment camps, kind of not good. Interesting dichotomy, very, very interesting story. I would recommend it for anybody, honestly. It's a young adult book, but I recommend it to middle school kids. I recommend it to adults. It's wonderful. Next one. Some whiplash to a much, much younger book. Neither by R. Lyle Anderson is a book about this and that. This and that. And this and that are the two members of the society that exists until one comes along that's neither. And everybody's very, very mean to them. They kick them out, and then they go away, and then they find a place where nobody cares what they are. And they're very, very happy about it. And it's the art is just wonderful. All the characters are insanely cute and well designed. You look at the last page and it's just a gorgeous spread of all these really, really cute little animals. And it's very relatable in a lot of very applicable ways. You got a kid who's feeling kind of otherized for trans stuff, for biracial stuff, just feeling otherized in really any way. It's very, very cogent for that. Very, very cogent also for understanding like why that sort of stuff is not productive.
We seem to have just lost David. I don't know if he is coming back. Something must have gone wrong with his internet connection. So hopefully he'll make it back. I'm sure Dafydd is trying to track him down, but I'm going to cut in and do my list next while we're waiting for David to make his way back. So we're going to scroll down to the start of my list. Again, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Rachel. I'm the event manager in the Saratoga store. And here are some of what I've been reading lately. First up, we have, it sounds like he is on his way back. So I'll do my first book and then we'll cut back to David when he makes it back. So my first book that I have is Shipwrecked. It is a romance novel, and this is the one pre-order that I have on my list. It's actually coming out next week, and I will tell you about it in a little bit since David is back. So, or I think David is back.
Yes, I am.
Okay, awesome.
Okay, sorry about that, folks. What do we got next? The Wolf Suit, I believe it was. So this one's for a little bit of an older audience, probably about 5-ish and up, maybe a little bit younger. It's a graphic novel about a wonderful friendly little sheep who is very scared of the woods because there are a bunch of wolves in the woods. And the wolves want to eat the sheep and they growl at them and scare them. And so he resolves to make a soup for himself, a wolf soup, and go out and eat all the berries he can. And everything, of course, goes awry. His suit starts coming apart. And as things start getting more and more heated, the art does a very, very good job of becoming like more and more sinister. But then it all comes back around. And I won't tell you what happens with the wolves. I don't want to spoil it. But there's certainly something going on with their treatment of him that isn't quite what it seems. It's just absolutely gorgeous. It's very, very well written. I had a hard time believing this was their first book, Sid Sharp, who did the illustrations and the writing. And it's just got such character. Like you look, this is one of the first pages. They wake up, they do their stretches, and then they go over to their flowers and they eat their flowers. The second I saw it, I knew I would love it. Next one is the stocking stuffer. It's a pretty long book. It's about the size of a stocking. And I think that's to specifically tease me about the fact that I won't be able to put it in my stocking as a Christmas gift because Christmas is over the day we open the stockings. But I'm recommending it nonetheless. It's a cute little book about a mouse named Tinsel, who is kind of a last minute addition to the Christmas mythos. I remember kind of as a kid, I really, really liked the idea of Santa and the elves. And then one day I found out Mrs. Claus existed and I was like, what, there's another one. And then I found out about Rudolph and I was so excited that there was another one. And I mean, if you want to capitalize on that, this is the sort of thing. Tinsel goes around with Santa and he helps him shelve all of, or not shelve, I'm shelving too many books. He helps Santa put away all the gifts in the stockings because Santa's running late one night and he really, really needs help divvying up the workload. But Tinsel sees that and he comes down and he gives Santa a hand. And it's told as kind of a pastiche of the night before Christmas. The rhyme scheme is really, really nice and fun. If you're gonna read it out loud, I'd recommend just getting a feel for the rhythm of it a little bit. But it is definitely a very fun read aloud book. The art is really, really cute. The story is really, really cute. And it ends off on a wonderful note of them putting a stocking on the mouse of the house too, who is often neglected as a recipient of the Christmas gifts. Speaking of stocking stuffers, for adults, we've got this, Phone Detox. It is a tiny little book in the shape of a phone by this collective called School of Life. And they've got more of a philosophical bent to the analysis of like consumption of phone materials. And what I really like about the book is that it does a very good job of not being like all that patronizing with the way it analyzes like the downsides of engaging too much with technology. It presents very like practical solutions, like the idea that you maybe allot a specific time, like once a week, where you experiment with not using your phone. And it does a very, very good job of kind of going from idea to idea, trying to pick apart why and how it might be maladaptive to do these certain things. And it does it so cogently and like empathetically that like even if you were a diehard hedonist, you'd have to kind of concede most of the points. I mean, and it's very, very weirdly esoteric with how it analyzes it. Like it goes from like monasticism and how monks teach us about the benefits of technology to like a a sort of treatise on human engagement with pornography. And then all these cool little infographics about shopping as it relates to the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, all the way over to the end where it talks about death and how phones relate to your relationship to death. And the one caveat I might want to give is that you probably shouldn't buy it for somebody who might take it as a passive aggressive gift. If you're going to put it in their stocking, then I think you're trying to sell them something. But it is a very, very engaging, productive read. The next one, I believe, is The Very Special Thing. A story about a cute little red squirrel who loves his acorn and is very, very bad at understanding other people's love for their stuff. He loves stuff. He sees stuff and he wants it, and he sees something cool that somebody else has, and he thinks, oh, I'll just take that because I want it. And he ends up having way, 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 way too much stuff in his house, and he can no longer find the acorn he so desperately adored. And I'm somebody who struggles a lot with a deep attachment to stuff. I have too much stuff. I need to get rid of a lot of my stuff. And I feel like this book probably would have helped me as a kid in kind of learning to not value everything with the same urgency that I value the things I genuinely care a lot about. Great, great little morality tale. Off of the children's books onto the adult ones, I read a lot of comics. I'm a big superhero fan, and of course that means I'm quite a big Batman fan. And this is probably my favorite Batman comic run that's come out recently, Task Force Z. If you're at all like a fan of the Batman Rogues Gallery, like basically another term for all of his villains, this basically takes a bunch of the villains that he hasn't that haven't had much of a spotlight recently. Maybe they've been like prematurely killed off. Maybe they've just not had a spotlight for some other reason other than dying. But it brings them all back as zombies. And the idea is that they're brought back under Batman's old Robin. And he's leading a team where these are villains that need a certain serum to stay zombies, to stay alive. And they work under him, but they're like very, very, they're still not all that, they're not all there, and they're also not all there ethically, because they're zombies and they're also bad people. And it's a very, very kind of irreverent take on the Task Force X Suicide Squad type thing, but that also somehow seems a lot more well thought out and well put together than a lot of the more recent runs of that stuff, because it does genuinely care about the story it's telling and the characters it's telling. It's not going way too hard into the fact that, oh, the zombies and gore and all of this is super, super edgy and cool. So if you know anybody who's a really big Batman fan, or if you are a big Batman fan, definitely something to check out. And then lastly, Dance. This is a manga that I read and finished around last Christmas. So I'm feeling nostalgic for it right about now. This is what Task Force Z isn't, in the sense of kind of reveling in its edginess. It's a story of a bunch of people who die and then are brought back to life and have to fight aliens all over the place. And they just get teleported to where aliens are and they have to fight them. And it's very strange. It doesn't explain much. It just drops you into everything, and then suddenly everybody's fighting aliens. And all you're really left to do is look in awe as they're engaging with these absolute behemoths that are absolutely horrifyingly illustrated by the author Oda. And as you get through it, it actually turns from this really full into the weird nihilistic nature of like seeing people kill everything into a tale about understanding connection to others, understanding the relationship of mankind to the other species on the planet, and the whiplash between all of the themes that it introduces from the beginning to end is just so strong. It had to be intentional. I'm going to show off another picture. The art is just gorgeous. I cannot recommend this book enough if you are into reading stories where the characters are vibrant in ways that you would see in real people. Characters change in very realistic ways, and they also engage with their surroundings in really realistic ways, where you don't feel like anybody is too much of a pastiche or too much of somebody with a lot of plot armor attached to them. Every action somebody takes has meaningful consequences, and yeah, I can't say enough good stuff about this. If you're into sort of action manga, it's just wonderful. Yeah.
Thank you, David. That was a great list, and great to hear about all of those books. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us tonight. So I'm going to go next. I've got my list, and I'm going to go back to the book I was starting to talk about when David's internet got difficult. So Shipwrecked by Olivia Dade. This is the one book on my list that is a pre-order. It's coming out on Tuesday of next week. It is the third book in Olivia Dade's All the Feels romance series. And they are really fun, fluffy, happy, feminist romance novels with a lot of fat positivity in them. They are all set with the cast of sort of an alternate reality version of the Great Game of Thrones series. And they have a lot of fake fan fiction interspersed in them, fake scripts of other movies and TV shows that these actors have starred in, and fake text message change, sort of the group chats of the cast of this show. Sorry about the background noise. So they are a lot of fun, a real hoot. And this new one, it follows two actors who had a one-night stand and then wind up being cast into the show together and being their part of the show is being filmed on a remote island in the North Sea. And so they are suddenly, they're in the North Sea on their own for 6 years filming this TV show together. Sparks fly, humor flies, and it's a tremendous amount of fun. So that is Shipwrecked by Olivia Dade. And then next up is a novel that I read over the summer. It's been actually a pretty big bestseller this summer. It's called Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. Some of you might remember her from the wonderful storied life of A.J. Fikry a few years ago. That's a glorious novel. This one is also glorious, but completely different, which I love when writers sort of stretch like that. This follows two friends, Sam and Sadie. They're childhood friends in the 90s who become estranged in their teen years and then reconnect in college and start making video games together. And they're real artists of video games, which is not a world that I'm that interested in, but it is just riveting about friendship and art and what it means to have a creative partnership. And I really honestly don't want to say more about it than that, other than that it is absolutely beautiful. And there aren't enough books about friendship and long-term friendship in the world. And this is a really lovely addition to that. Then next up is People Person by Candice Carty-Williams. She is a British author of Jamaican ancestry. She wrote the wonderful book Queenie a few years ago, if anyone happened to read that. People Person is an absolute hoot with a heart of gold. It follows the 5 children of a London man named Cyril, who has had these 5 children with 4 different women. They meet once as teenagers, and the oldest of them sort of says, hey, if you guys ever need me, give me a call. Fast forward years later, they're all in their 20s and 30s, and one of them is attacked by her boyfriend. She shoves him away. He falls, cracks his head open. There's blood everywhere, and he's non-responsive. And so she calls her older sister, who she's met once, to say, help me. And the siblings assemble to bury the body, except perhaps the body is not a body. And ridiculous hijinks sort of follow from there. It's absolutely weird and wild and hilarious what's going on in this book, but it's also very tender about these 5 adults who weren't raised together, who don't have the same mothers, who have a very difficult relationship with their father, learning how to be a family. So it's really just a lovely, lovely book. And so that is People Person by Candice Carty-Williams. Next up is probably my favorite book of the year. It is a really weird one, though. So this is Thistlefoot by Jenna Rose Nethercott. She's a poet. She's published poetry before, but this is her debut novel. And this is a blend of fantasy and literary fiction. I think we shelve it in our science fiction and fantasy section, but it honestly could go either way. If you read, for example, Kelly Link, I think that would be a good, comparable author for this. So Thistlefoot follows 2 Jewish American young adults who were raised in their parents' traveling puppet troupe and are now estranged. They're in their early 20s. And they both get a call from a shady lawyer in Eastern Europe who tells them, you've inherited something from an ancestor here in Poland. It's large, and you need to meet up together at the shipping terminal in Red Hook, Brooklyn to pick it up. And when they see each other there and open this case, it turns out that what they have inherited is a sentient house on chicken feet. They have inherited Baba Yaga's cottage. Along with Baba Yaga's cottage, they have inherited some shady, evil force that has followed the cottage from Eastern Europe and is intent on destroying it, and honestly destroying the diversity of the modern world. This sounds really weird. It is really weird. It is beautifully written. It is absolutely gorgeous writing. And it is a meditation on Jewish intergenerational trauma. It is an importing of Yiddish folk tales into the modern world. It is everything that is glorious in a book because it is so creative and so unusual and so beautifully done. So that is Thistlefoot by Jenna Rose Nethercott, and again, one of my favorite books of the year. Another really terrific book on Jewish themes is The Matchmaker's Gift by Linda Cohen-Loigman. This would be a great book group book. It's very light and lovely. It has 2 separate storylines, a grandmother and a granddaughter. The grandmother, it's following her as she arrives in New York City as a young Jewish immigrant in the 1920s, and discovers when she's there that she can see true love between people. She can see this sort of cloud between people when they are meant to be truly in love with each other. And so she sets herself up as a matchmaker. And I did not know this, but apparently matchmakers in that era and in Jewish culture were traditionally men, which was not a thing I was aware of. And they're not so keen on a rival young woman matchmaker who is herself single and not married and who is getting in the way of their business. So it follows her story and then the story of her granddaughter in the present day, who is a very, very cynical divorce attorney, but perhaps has her grandmother's gift after all. And the action in the present day storyline is just after the grandmother's death, where the divorce attorney has inherited her grandmother's matchmaking journals. And shenanigans ensue from there. And it's really just a lovely, lovely book. Next up, we have a cookbook. It is a really gorgeous new baking book, Gâteau, The Surprising Simplicity of French Cakes. I've only baked a couple of things from it so far, though I have a lot of recipes dog-eared that I will be making. The honey orange blossom cake is to die for. And what I love about this is that there are a real range of cakes in here, from some incredibly simple ones. That honey cake that I mentioned, took me maybe 20 minutes to get into the oven and was gorgeous, to some very, very elaborate ones. So sort of wherever you are as a baker, there are things in here that you will really enjoy making. So that is Gâteau. If you're a baker or you're shopping for a baker, it's a great one. And then I have this one, Laser Writer 2 is a book that came out recently in paperback, which is why I put it on here. It is very weird, very cool experimental fiction set in a Macintosh repair shop in New York City in the 1990s. But it's really a coming of age novel. A young woman gets hired to repair the printers in this Macintosh repair shop, but also learns about who she is and who she wants to be. And it's written, if anyone listening reads Jenny Awful or other sort of slightly experimental novelists who write in snippets, in little chunks, this is written in that style. So it's stylistically very interesting and a really fun one to read. Next up, we've got The Book of Delights by Ross Gay. That is a collection of essays. Ross Gay is a poet, and he so he's a poet, and he wrote this collection of essays that each day he sat down to write about one thing that delighted him. It is absolutely beautiful. I read it in fits and starts, just little bits and pieces here and there. It really gives me something to feel joyous about. So if you have someone in your life who perhaps needs a little bit of delight, this could be a lovely gift for them. It is also newly out in paperback. So that is The Book of Delights by Ross Gay. And then last of all on my list is another lovely found family novel. And another novel that could be shelved in multiple places in the store. We actually had a debate about whether it went in fantasy or in romance. We wound up putting it in romance. It's The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana. And it is Mika Moon is a witch in a culture where witches have to stay separate. They are not allowed to spend time with other witches. And she has lived alone almost her whole life. And then one day she gets a direct message on her Instagram asking her to come and be a guardian to 3 young witches who need, or a tutor to 3 young witches who need help learning how to control their powers. Takes the job, and sparks fly with the grumpy librarian who is their guardian. And it is very sweet, very lovely romance, but really about finding family when family is something that you've not been able to have. So that is another sweet, happy read if that is something that you need. That's my list. I'm going to hand things over to David, and he will take it away. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much, Rachel. What a pleasure as always. So I thought I'd tack a few books. I know I went on the last one of these, but I thought I'd tack a few books on as well. And mostly because the number one book on the New York Times bestseller list right now is the new Cormac McCarthy novel, The Passenger. And I've got to say, so McCarthy, the Blood Meridian, the Border trilogy with all the pretty horses, Country for Old Men, The Road, Pulitzer winner. He had been silent for 16, 17 years, something like that. And the big excitement this year among a lot of the staff was the 2 new Cormac McCarthy novels. First with The Passenger, which is out now, which just came out a week before last, I think, or maybe last week. And then it's followed up with on I think it's December 6th, the second of the two books of his that are coming out, Stella Maris. This is an interesting, it's a huge thing for literary fiction right now. Cormac McCarthy's the next book is Swan Song, the coda of his sort of the greatest living big white American novelist. And the passage, they're both very fascinating books. As I said, they went through all of there's a lot of excitement. A lot of us read it at the bookstore. And The Passenger starts off with it's about this brother and sister, and on the first page, the sister has killed herself, has committed suicide, and it's about this man, the brother, who is a shipwreck diver, and he's a salvage diver, and there's this airplane that has crashed into the Gulf of Mexico, and there should be another person on it, and they're missing, and that's sort of what animates the book. But it's really more interested in the conversations that this man is having with these other people, and it's a novel heavy with history, as is the second one, Stella Maris, heavy with the sort of the history. These Bobby and his sister, they were children of someone who worked at the Manhattan Project, children of two people who worked at the Manhattan Project. So the bomb is heavy in both of these books. And the first novel, he is sort of maneuvering himself through New Orleans, concerned about people who might be chasing him. It becomes a kind of a road novel, but it's really animated by ideas. And the second one, Stella Maris, that's coming out in December, is also animated by ideas. And it's about his sister, who is a math genius. She's brilliant, and she's had these huge correspondences with the great, brilliant figures of math in the 20th century. This is all set in the 1970s, 1960s and 1970s, these two novels. And she's a genius, but she's also got a bipolar disorder. In The Passenger, each section, each chapter sort of starts with these figures from this girl's her psychoses, the thalidomide kid, and then it moves to Bobby Western's sort of the novel as a whole. So we're dealing with both of these characters, and both of the novels are very sort of starkly different, but also if you're a big fan of McCarthy, if you've read his books in the past, they're still full of that same lyrical prose, and they're just absolutely fascinating. It's really a treasure and a treat to have these two novels by McCarthy that are sort of surprises to us, and are sort of a real sort of gauntlet that are thrown down, these interesting books that are provocative and that are sort of a big, sort of exciting literary happening to round out 2022. Speaking of rounding out 2022, up next is two books by Emma Smith, who personally, we hosted Emma on a virtual event for this book. This is Shakespeare, back in 2021, I think, with the director of the Saratoga Shakespeare Company. And it was I don't know if Rachel agrees with me, but I think it was one of the very best virtual events that we've hosted, that I've had the pleasure of hosting over these last few years. She was just absolutely fascinating to listen to. So I immediately bought her book and devoured it. And I got to say, if you've got anyone that likes Shakespeare in your life, it is a wonderful gift. This really is just a delightful book to dip into too. It's really, as someone who has studied, has read Shakespeare, has taken classes on him, it's a real pleasure to find sort of new things. Her style is delightful. She's immediately enjoyable, and the way each sort of the book is broken down by, you can't see it on here, of course, but the different plays. And she doesn't go through all the plays. It's just her favorite ones, as she says. But the major ones are here: Richard III, Taming the Shrew, Richard II, Merchant of Venice, The Midsummer Night's Dream, all the ones with that little deer, Hamlet, The Tempest. And she has this really fresh take. She is a dean. She's at Oxford. She's a dean of Shakespeare. She's a professor of Shakespeare at Oxford. And so it's just a really fresh, wonderful, delightful take on each one of these that sends you back to the place. Like this past summer, I had the pleasure, we had in Manchester a lovely performance of A Midsummer Night's Dream in the park. At the park in Manchester, and I, a 15-page little chapter in this, I had the pleasure of rereading before, and it really just made me just so delighted, and I just enjoyed the play so much more, sort of thinking about the things. And as someone who's read these plays so many times and has studied them, but the way she approaches them each time it's really sort of novel, and it's crazy that something that's 400 years old can be novel in this way. But really, This Is Shakespeare it's really a very exciting take on the book, and I am really excited. One of the nonfiction books I am most excited for this year is her new book, Portable Magic: A History of Books and Their Readers, and I have just barely dipped into it, just about 15 pages, and I've been so excited about it. I've been waiting for it. I've seen it sort of listed here, and I've been excited for Penguin to send me a copy of it, and it's just got it the other day, and it starts with sort of a history of the folk tale of the magician's nephew, the one who, there's the book, the secret book that the magician knows, or the sorcerer knows, or the wise person knows how to use, but the foolish person, it's sort of comes in and makes things go terrible, and it's a danger, and it's a catastrophe, and so it's sort of an interesting sort of thing on what really is magical about the codex, the book as we know it, which is such a wonderful way to transfer knowledge. Nothing else has even come near it. All these ebooks and Kindles and audiobooks, nothing holds it. We can access it. We can move it. The book is in a sense always moving with the pages, as the great art critic John Berger says. But we can access it. We can touch all these things. Anyway, I'm really excited about it. It is the book I am going to read very much next after I finish reading my current book that I'm reading, this novel that is not the next book on the list because I put them in the wrong order. Sorry, Rachel, but it's the second one out there, Lone Women. It's coming out in March by Victor Laval. I have been meaning to read Victor Laval for literally 4 years, as long as I've worked at Northshire, and I've been hoping that there was a book come out. And as soon as I saw the new one on his on the sort of the pile of advanced readers copies, I grabbed it and started reading it, and it is fantastic so far. I'm only about a little over halfway through it. This is a novel, as I said, coming out in March by Victor Laval. And this woman, this Black woman, moves to Montana, and the only thing she's got with her is a giant steamer trunk. And in it is a monster, literally. And it has a monster that has literally killed her parents. So the book opens with, hold on, I've got to actually find the sentence. It's a powerful, wonderful opening. It opens with an epigraph from Toni Morrison. But then it says, there are two kinds of people in this world, those who live with shame and those who die from it. On Tuesday, Adelaide Henry would have called herself the former, but by Wednesday, she wasn't as sure. And so she's got this huge chest, and the first chapter is her setting fire to her home that she has lived in all of her lives, with the dead bodies of her parents in their bed. And she's taking this chest that has some kind of beast in it that seems to have done this damage to her parents, and she's taking it to Montana, and she's claiming it's a night set in 1915, and it's usually it's historical fiction, but there's a little bit of fantasy, of course, injected into it, in which there's all these women, and there's a lot more Black women than we would have thought, but it's historically accurate, that moved to Montana, the West, to take on these land grants, to take a parcel of land, tend it for 4 years, and then make it their own. And that's where it starts. And it is just great. I know what's in the box. I'm not going to tell you. And I know what it does to people. And I know what's happening. And there's all the people that she meets along the way. And it is just great. Adelaide is a wonderful character. And I mean, book is just great. It's going to be a huge book for 2023. I'm so excited about it. But again, it's a ways off there. So as soon as I read that, as soon as I finish that, which will be in just the next couple of days, I'll tear through Portable Magic, and I know just a few days, because For whatever reason, literary fiction, literary history, literary criticism is my catnip, and it won't take any time. The next book, I don't have a prop for it. It's an old book. It's from 1926. It's up the next on the screen shared page here from Rachel. Lolly Willows by Sylvia Townsend Warner. This is a wonderful novel. And as you're reading it, it seems just like a normal comedy of manners, early 20th century, feminist comedy of manners. You're reading through it, it's great. This old maid, she is a daughter of a man. The man dies. She goes to live with her brother's family. She's living most of her life, and yes, you're reading it. You're going through this book, and you're going through the novel about halfway through, and she realizes, no, wait, my life is not my own, and she decides she's going to move to the country, to this village of Old Mop here in England. And as she moves there, lots of weird things start to happen. And her nephew comes to visit, and it's too much. And she's wanting to escape. So she runs out to the middle of the field. She begs for this freedom, and someone hears her. And she comes home, and there's a black kitten waiting for her. And then she pets it, and it bites her hand and attacks her. And she sees a single drop of blood in her hand. And she realizes that she's entered into a compact with the Prince of Darkness, with Satan himself. And Satan is going to make her a witch, and she is going to live in this town. And lo and behold, the rest of the townspeople are also witches and warlocks. And Satan's going to get rid of her annoying nephew who's moved in, and she's happy about it. It's an amazing book. It's a wonderful feminist novel too, because there's a great sort of moment of witnessing, what this life of just doing for other people, of emotional labor does, and how it wears people down. It's great. And then it just veers off. It's a great novel for this time of year, particularly for October. I had the pleasure of sort of giving it a book review on Halloween to the staff at Northshire. And it's just a real pleasure. Sylvia Townsend Warner, no one reads her anymore. All of her novels are completely different from each other. It's a wonderful book. It's out from New York Review of Book Classics. That they bring in all kinds of books that are no longer in stock, no longer in print. Take a look. It's great. The next book, one other book. I don't have the prop of it. It's another book that's coming out next year in January, and that's The Guest Lecture by Martin Riker. Riker is the founder of Dorothy Press, a feminist press, which is all kinds of wonderful books that I'm a big fan of. The short stories of Leonora Carrington, and a book by Barbara Cummins that I've loved for years, called Who Was Changed and Who Was Dead. And it's his second novel, and it takes place all in a hotel bedroom as this woman has horrible insomnia, laying in this hotel bed in between her daughter and her husband. The next day, she's going to give a guest lecture on John Maynard Keynes. But tonight, she can't sleep. And so she's going through her lecture. Just recently, she was denied tenure by her faculty at the university she works at, which she's a feminist economist. And so in this novel, she is in her bed, she is thinking about her life, and she is going through what she's going to try to do tomorrow in this speech. And she remembers Keynes, and she's using the Loci method, LOCI, which is a Roman rhetorical function of remembering the parts of your speech based as if you're giving them in the different rooms of your house. So she's walking through her house, and then she's got an imagined version of John Maynard Keynes following her around, talking to her, and we're learning her life, and we're learning her speech, and we're learning everything. It is so good. I talked about it. I recommended it to some friends from work, and 2 people almost got into a fist fight about who would get the book next. It is so good. January 2023. And then the very last book, we're almost out of time. The very last book that I want to talk about tonight, it's Macanudo, Welcome to Elsewhere, by an Argentine cartoonist named Laniers, the real name of, this is the pen name of a man named Ricardo Siri. He lives currently in Norwich, Vermont. If this is the best book gift of the year, I think. We have a few autographed copies still. I hosted him for an event. As I said, he lives in Norwich. If you like Jeff Smith, author, the creator of Bone, if you like Calvin and Hobbes or The Far Side, there's an introduction by Matt Groening, the inventor, the creator of The Simpsons. He is a cartoonist, and he makes these little strips. I don't think you're going to see anything really very well from how I hold this up to you, but he's a great inventor of these things, and he's got all these different characters. This one here is a imaginary monster named Olga, who haunts a little boy's dreams, who bothers him. Look, here's another one. Here's Olga bothering this kid, saying, "Olga, I'm studying," and then Olga goes away, still studying. Olga, Olga. For an imaginary friend, your ability to exasperate is very real. And each of these sort of cartoons are these little panel cartoons like Garfield, and they appear in newspapers all over the world, literally, this guy, and particularly in Latin America. And they're really magical, and they're strange and fun. And there's a man of mystery who gets into all kinds of hijinks, and there's a little girl who's really imaginative. It is just a remarkable book. There's this little creature here who says, "Hey, I have a big idea," and he's standing here around all these big feet and legs. We have a very limited amount of signed copies of these. As I said, I hosted Laniers, and he made these wonderful pen and ink drawings in each one. But I mean, Picasso's in here, and there are these strange little elves that have hats. And again, you can see in this one, like, this is normal cartoon panels, but in this one, he tries to reinvent it by making it into a sort of a Mobius strip. Just, a wonderful book. That's Laniers. Welcome, Manuk Macanudo. Welcome to Elsewhere. And it's 6:57. I'm looking at it now at the time. Thank you all so much for joining us. This has been a real pleasure tonight. I hope you can find some books that might be some good choices for some people on your holidays list. And thank you both. Thank you all so much for attending.
Yes, you can find all of these titles at northshire.com. I'm going to put the link in the chat one more time. And we hope to see you at another event sometime soon. Have a great night, everybody.
Take care, everyone. Thanks a lot.